they've got to deal with 2 gifts.
You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Welcome back to the Eternal Tournament Series. This is Season 6, Week 1, and we're in Round 5 of Swiss. We've got a heater for you with 2 Skycrag decks going at it. I am Gabe, also known as Calimdir, and I'm joined by Sir Rhino.
Hello, yes, we are back for Round 5, and yeah, pair of Skycrag decks, both going Skycrag burn. We haven't seen much of Skycrag lately. Most people opting with the Stone Scar route as of late, but level 13 David and Paradox went with Skycrag burn today, and it's serving them well as they're both currently 3-1. This is round 5, so they're doing well, and they've got slightly different takes on it. Both decks have some overlap. Notably, both have 4 Groundbreaker as far as new cards go. Same with the expected Champion of Fury and Vadius, Obliterate, Soulfire Drake, those sorts of things. But some slight differences in the middle in terms of removal and some 3-drop threats here. How about we break those down real quick before we get in the action?
Yeah, we'll get into it pretty soon. But basically, Paradox is maybe a little bit closer to what you think of Skycrag aggro being post Omens of the Past.
Yeah.
But he's got these. He's more focused on taking out these control decks, and we're getting into the match. But yeah, he's got 4 Soulfire Drakes, like you said, and backlashes. So he's just got a lot of staying power.
Yeah, and as the match goes underway here, we see 13 David open on a ticking Grenadin. So this is when Skycrag aggro, as it came to surface like before Omens of the Past, ticking Grenadin was a big feature because it came about with Alpine Tracker, which David is playing as a 2 of, which is a 4-drop that deals 1 damage to every unit in play, so you can like kill your own ticking Grenadin and survive that long to do 3 extra damage. But as we see here, ticking Grenadin dies as it trades with an Oni Ronin. Champion of Fury comes down from Paradox and gets him 3 damage.
Yes, so the notable differences are level 13 David has some more evasive units in Cloud Snake Harrier. Doesn't have as many Soulfire Drakes, but he's got the Harriers and the Trackers, which are another charge unit. So he's a little lower to the ground in that sense, and has some more evasion. So he gets an early damage, and then he's got 4 Flame Blasts and 4 Obliterates, right? Whereas Paradox is trying to play a little bit more mid-range.
Yep, we see the Flame Blast come out here. Does 2 damage instead of 3 since the nerf, but that's enough to take out a Champion of Fury. And Paradox finds a newly buffed Rakano Outlaw from Stern, and right off the top of the deck, it comes down here. Paradox is going to get to curve out Outlaw into Groundbreaker, it looks like, and we'll see what David has as a response.
So I have to say, as somebody who knows Paradox, he really loves the combo of Groundbreaker with any sort of buff, War Cries or weapons. So he's really been on that since that card came out.
David initially swinging with Grenadin, thinking block, and then I get to use Flame Blast to trade up, and then remembering Flame.
Yeah, it doesn't work anymore.
But yeah, Groundbreaker being a 3/6 here is huge for Paradox, and as we mentioned, David also has 4 Groundbreakers in their list, but it looks like David's in fear of activating Spark for a future Groundbreaker is just going to chump block here and let the Ticking Grenadin do 3 damage to Paradox's face.
Yeah, at level 13, David can afford to do this because his deck has so much direct damage that he can just sort of get in the damage where he needs to and chip away at him from hand. He doesn't need to develop his board as much.
And that's what we're seeing here as a Caleb Saver face takes Paradox down to 15. David's got 10 points of burn in hand right now, so just needs to find like one more thing to take down Paradox. But in the meantime, Paradox is swinging and swinging and swinging, and drops down a Storm Dancer.
Yeah, that's one of the Cobalt Monument in Paradox's deck. Just another way to make it a little more consistent in your mid-range threats, which I really like that card, by the way. Yep. Probably my favorite of the Monuments.
Yep, David opting to use a Flame Blast to take out that Storm Dancer. Could have played a Cloud Snake Hair. That's another feature of David's deck, 3/3 flyer that gives your spells +1 damage. But wanted to take the pressure off first before doing that. Speaking of pressure, Paradox lays down a Vadius and an Oni Ronin.
Yeah, so here's the disadvantage of being the more burn heavy deck is that you get behind on tempo because you don't want to point your burn spells at their units. You want to be pointing them at their face, but units stack up damage much more quickly in a race.
Yep. Now, David has ways to regain that tempo, right? We talked about Alpine trackers. That's pretty good against a deck with 4 Pyro Knight, 4 Oni Ronin. And it's not like David lacks really 4 Taking Granite and 4 Torch, 4 Permafrost. It's just David is playing 4 Flame Blast and 4 Obliterates, and we're seeing it here being just taking up a lot of space in hand, whereas Paradox, they draw some Soulfire Drakes here, they're not going to be too sad about.
Yeah, definitely. So Paradox has a lot of really good draws here, whereas David is really looking for. He doesn't have the same amount of 1-drops in early units because of how much burn he's fitting in this deck. So I think he's trying to sort of hedge a little bit here by obliterating the Oni Ronin. He wants to get the damage value out of that obliterate. But this race is pretty scary for him.
This race is over as Torch goes face and then Obliterate
and there's
plus
Obliterate
6
off the top.
Yep. So yeah, it wasn't Obliterate off the top. Paradox already had it.
Oh, okay. I had moved away his hand cam.
Yeah. Paradox drew a Pyro Knight off the. Not exactly useful, but yeah, that's why we saw the end of turn Torch, and then Obliterate was lethal. David couldn't really do much there. If he played out the 3/3 flyer, that just dies to Torch anyways, and he's pretty dead. So kind of damned if he did, damned if he didn't there. Just a little too many Flame Blasts there, and we'll see if those end up coming out as we go to sideboards. David could get more early removal. We see an extra Piercing Shot and Rock Slide, some Polymorph's Wisdom. It could even go bigger and like almost control-y burn. We'll see if that's what David wants to do. What do you see Paradox doing though in this matchup?
So Paradox doesn't want to change much. He maybe wants to bring in the Rock Slides, but that's about it. The Morning Stars and the Crystallizers are fine cards, but he's not really trying to push through any blockers, so they're just not that useful. Polymorph there's no really important unit that needs to be dealt with. So I think it's really just the Rock Slides, if at all.
Do you have any consideration of taking out one of your 2/1s because you know David's slide? You already know, except that you have to dodge those kinds of things.
So I definitely think it's a consideration, but there's only there's Piercing Shots, there's Rock Slides, and there's Alpine Tracker, right?
Yeah.
But it's still stuff that David has to spend a card on. And then you have the bigger mid-game threats. And then it's also, sure, yeah, you'd like to take them out, but what are you bringing in? You're bringing in Rock Slide. What are your targets for Rock Slide even? You have Champion of Fury, Grenadin, and that's about it.
Yeah, basically if you're taking out a 2/1, it's to bring in something like Morning and just to make your other units that might stick a little bit better, but then you may be giving up too much tempo in the early games stages. So we'll have to see as the challenge goes out and the players get ready.
Yeah, we're back in the game 2. I have to admit, maybe I gave Morningstar not quite enough credit because it does put a lot of stuff outside of burn range. But it's still mostly for breaking through blockers.
If you put a Morningstar on Groundbreaker, it has to have Permafrost, or that thing is never dying. So there is some real upside in this matchup to that line of thinking. It's just a question of is that better than something else you can take out? But anyway, the game is underway. Looks like Paradox got the play, and now David's got to decide how to proceed here. But can't turn one Permafrost even if he wanted to. Both primal sources are depleted, and this Oni Ronin will at least get one swing in. And we see Paradox did bring in that Morningstar. What came out? Not quite sure. Certainly not Oni Ronin, as Oni Ronin is down here, and Rock Slide is going to be devastating.
Yeah, definitely seeing the Morningstar coming down. Not the threats that he really wants after these Oni Ronins. Like there's not a lot of gas, and like we talked about, David is the one who doesn't mind sort of this empty board state when both players are low. I mean, we're still very much above 20 health here, but Paradox wants to be deploying threats.
Yeah, and this was the risk we talked about keeping in Oni Ronin or Pyro Knight. That might have been a necessary evil, but it feels real bad against a deck that you know is going to have 3 Rock Slide and 2 Alpine Trackers. And now Vadius gets to activate the spark on Groundbreaker, and Groundbreaker is a 3/6 double damage here.
Yeah, that is no joke.
Yeah.
But it gets obliterated, which is fine. I think Paradox doesn't mind using his burn spells on units as much as David does, because he's got more more of those Soulfire Drakes and things.
Yeah, Paradox certainly doesn't mind using Obliterate on Groundbreaker. He mostly minds that he's getting beaten down real hard here and has to skip playing this Vadius. But gets to play double Vadius here, and David can clear out one of them by using both Permafrost and Obliterate. We'll see if he opts to do that, as currently they can't really block Vadius, David's own Vadius, except with a double block. But at the same time, if they do double block, David knows he can ultimate Vadius the next turn. So I think he'd rather just keep it alive and clear the way for that. Although opting to kill the smaller Vadius is a little odd.
That's the one extra damage is what that is.
Yep, David valuing that one extra damage here. And we'll see what Paradox can do here as a response. Can put a Morningstar on Vadius, but again, David's Vadius will then activate and get 4 extra attacks, so it still goes through. Paradox, can do that. It's just means it'll have to chump block anyway. So he draws a second Vadius, and we might see that, but no, activates Vadius and swings, and David's like, okay, you're dead now.
Well, he was playing around David not having the power. But if you don't have the power, he probably has deals damage. So I don't know.
It's just you're just in a tough spot there. I don't think there is a right move for Paradox, really. It's like, my burn opponent either draws a power or doesn't draw a power, and they're a burn deck. So we see Rockslide really being the story of that game, getting the 2-for-1 off those Oni Ronins and clearing the way for the mid-range threats to do their work.
Yeah, and then it was that game we saw David with the Groundbreakers and stuff. Yeah. So
I think I still like keeping in the Oni Ronins and Pyro Knights. The biggest argument, especially to keeping those in, it is from Paradox perspective, is you have 3 back. So if you can get a 1-drop to stick and hold up backlash in some spots, it'll still end up working out. So while it is brutal that they die to Rockslide like that, as you said, you can't really change your core game plan that much, and we'll see if the challenge comes out again quickly here. So I don't think they'll make too many more changes.
Yeah, no, I am gonna have to agree with you there. And yeah, backlash is probably better than I give it credit for in this matchup.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, when your opponent's playing 4 Obliterate, 4 Flame Blast, and I don't know if they're post board. I mean, that is huge. Getting to use it in those kind of situations and protect your key targets or your own life total. But we see here, Paradox has the play again, gets the turn 1 Oni Ronin again. But level 13 David has a Rockslide in waiting. But it's really just about Paradox being on the play and getting at least one Warcry in here, unless David opts to use a Permafrost.
Yeah, but these 2 Vadiuses are going to do a lot of work. He doesn't mind Rockslide taking out 1 Oni Ronin. That's fine. That's a fair trade. He expects those. The Vadiuses are going to push through a lot, and David does not have an answer in his hand yet.
Yeah, so it's really David here. Slide to this Oni Ronin, just debating about, do I want to wait that long? Do I want to get them that 1 Warcry? I think I would let that happen. I think I would try and get value off Rockslide, but nope. David opts to use Permafrost here, and Rockslide will have plenty of other targets, right? Champion or this Rakano Outlaw off the top.
And, Paradox will just draw the card that he needed for the turn to keep his curve up. That's just, that Permafrost really... well, not that he could have played Rockslide anyway, but getting the undepleted power there, pretty useful.
Yeah, Permafrost not removing Oni Ronin banner was undepleted, and now meant that Paradox could curve out there. And David just has to use a Caleb's Favor here. Boy, rough turn 3. Can use a Permafrost to pop, and he just would instead just drop the Ticking Grenadin.
Yeah, Ticking Grenadin is fine here. You just got to play it out at some point. And you need to play Kayla's Favor, so there's no point playing the Vadius when it can't block or do anything. Trying to race to this Cobalt Monument, but Alpine Tracker is going to pop these Aegises, and that's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, that's a nice draw. We'll probably see the Ticking Grenadin swing, but instead he'll just Alpine Tracker first, swing with that. Because that actually trades with Vadius, where if a Vadius did block a Ticking Grenadin, it still doesn't die to Alpine Tracker because of the Aegis. But still,
Yeah,
nice draw there.
You only get one combat step, so you can't attack with both. And the Magma Javelin's coming in. That's surprising. I suppose that's because of the Vadiuses.
Yeah, Magma Javelin, a.k.a. Bad Charge, can actually be better than Charge Chain Flail post-nerf, as it's a bit more efficient damage-wise, especially on an empty board. But there, it takes out Vadius, although here it took out an Alpine Track.
It's also very bad at Auric Runehammer, but we're not in those factions, so you know.
Yeah, Skycard could play Auric Runehammer. I wouldn't be shocked to see it play Auric Runehammer, but instead we see the Magma Javelin. Notably, David has Charge Chain Flail on his sideboard instead of Magma Javelin. Paradox just double Caleb's favor. David is down to 8, but finds a Rock Slide, which can kill this Vadius. Because he opted to not play Cobalt Monument last turn, though, can't play both Rock Slide and Vadius this turn.
Yeah, so this looks like it's going to be whoever sort of gets down. Soulfire, if Paradox can get a burn spell or two, or a Soulfire Drake, or if David can draw a burn spell or two.
Yep. Yeah, I don't mind David holding the Cobalt, having a 4/4 fly in this matchup. Key, especially sure if he answers to Soulfire Drake. It just means this turn he won't be able to play an extra threat, which would be really nice when your opponent's at 11 if you could have access to 6 attack on board. And wow, Paradox rips another Magma Javelin off the top to cleanly deal with Vadius.
That is a pretty important champion right there.
Yeah. David continues to get punished for not playing out this Cobalt Monument, right? That's right. Sometimes you think you're playing it correctly, actually just punishes you over and over for it, as I couldn't play out Vadius and the Yeti here, but finally finds another power. This monument becomes a 4/4 flyer as Paradox uses a Permafrost and plays out an Oni Ronin.
This is looking pretty good for David. Paradox is going to have to draw some pretty key cards here to turn this around, and David has access to the same amount of draws and a lot of the same cards in his deck.
Yeah, and it looks like the draw
Speaking of...
Yeah, Paradox top decks a Diplomatic Seal, and David responds by top decking a Soulfire Drake.
And that's game 3, right?
Yeah, that is it. David takes it with the reverse sweep, down 1-0, but post-board, Rock Slide, Permafrost, doing work, and Soulfire Drake showing up there, taking over the skies and getting the win in. Paradox did use Magma Javelins to clear out some units, but took some extra damage in the process. And yeah, David, big ass flyers, gets there.
Yeah, and I gotta ask. Paradox was running 4 Soulfire Drakes, right? Did we see any of them?
0. We saw 0 Soulfire Drakes in 4 games from Paradox. Them's the breaks, especially in a fast matchup like that where you don't get many.
Yeah, you don't see that many cards.
Yeah. So instead, Paradox drew the 6th power of that game, and David got to turn Cobalt Monument into a threat and close it out.
Do we have any backup matches? We'll find that out for you guys in a minute. Yeah. What is going on in the bracket, though? Also, I think you have something today.
Yep, we're going to do a quick everybody's favorite little aReNGee Eternal, but we are working on a back. But in the meantime, as we get that set up, aReNGeeeternal.com, your one-stop shop for daily articles, ranked tier lists, stock deck lists, and of course, all the ETS information you could ever want, like the Hall of Fame, upcoming schedule, all of those things at aReNGeeeternal.com. So we're getting this next match set up. It looks like it's going to be Bassoon Buffoon, who we saw last round on Felm Control. Oh, no. Looks like, never mind. We were going to have a Felm Control versus Big Combre, but Big Combre, Komodo on Big Combre taking that. So we're still working on another backup match. But in the meantime, yeah, what other bracket breakdowns can we do here? David took that one, so Skycrag over Skycrag went.
That puts Tony G and Komodo in 5-0. So that they're going to be in your top 8. Yeah. They're your first confirmed top 8, and that's Armory, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not too surprising to see Tony G get to the 5-0 in the 4-0 bracket. He was on Argenport list, so when you're trying to play out units and put weapons on them and hopefully protect them with Aegis or whatever, it turns out Armory doesn't have too much of a problem dealing with Bartolo.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely a very good matchup for aReNGee. aReNGee has some pretty bad matchups in all these Elysian and Praxis decks around, but if you don't run into them, it's pretty good.
All right, and it looks like that whole round is actually over. So even though we started on a Skycrag burn kind of mirror, it did go to 3 games. We had a lot of action, and it's always interesting to see how aggro versus aggro. And yeah, this round is over. So we will return in just a moment. Won't take too long to set up this next round. We'll take a little break here, get back to round 6 of tournament action.